Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to do a talk about how I used TypeScript and a Raspberry Pi to hack my car so that I could control it with my voice. I'm going to talk a little bit about me just to introduce myself, give some context. I'll show a nice shiny picture of my car and some thoughts that I got when I bought it. I thought it would be cool to go ahead and enable voice control. I'm going to give a little bit of context around some of the technologies that I've used to achieve this, and then we'll finish up with some TypeScript to actually write some code that'll communicate with the car. So my name is William Cowell. I'm head of engineering for Muscle Food. It's a new engineering team. It's been around for about 9 months. I've got 16 years of commercial experience. I've been doing this for 9 years previously as a contractor, and I've worked for some of the world's largest and most recognizable brands, some big brands, maybe some not so big brands. So I originally started off as a .NET developer, so I started in C#. Obviously a natural progression for that would be TypeScript. I've done functional programming, so things like F# and Scala. I'd say majorly I'm a .NET developer though. I've done some Xbox 360, I've done some Xbox One, and then more recently obviously moved into cloud and into Microsoft Azure and some service fabric there. So here's a picture of the car. This was shortly after I bought the car, nice and shiny. And when you buy a car, you're all excited to use it and read the manuals and do everything that nerds do when they get a new toy. And something that my car came with was an app to control the car. Most new cars come with apps nowadays. I think people have come to expect it. It's not a bad app. It tells you, it gives you status information. So where is the car? Is the car locked? Is it charging? It's an electric car, by the way. Is the air conditioning turned on? And then it also gives you some remote control features. So you can do things like lock and unlock the car. You can flash the lights if you can't find your car. You can start and stop the charging. You can turn on and off the air conditioning. So for example, on a morning, if you leave the house every day at 8 AM and you want your car to be warm, then you can go into the app and set the car to warm up your car, so that when you leave for the day, you unplug it and you're not using any of the charge while you're on the road to heat up the car. So let's have a look what this looks like. The app, did I press that? Let me try that again. So we've got the app, to use the app, you've got to get out your phone, you've got to unlock your phone, you've got to launch the app. If you want to do anything, you've got to unlock the app itself. That's just to see information. If you want to actually do something, you've got to press and hold on a button, and you've got to sit and wait, and sit and wait, and sit and wait, and sit and wait, and then eventually it comes back and it's got air conditioning on. It was a bit of a long wait just to turn on my air conditioning, and then to turn it off, I've got to do the same thing. I push the button, and you've got to wait, and you've got to wait, and a little bit quicker there to actually turn off the air conditioning. So the app's great. It is a little bit slow, but the phone needs to be unlocked to use it. It uses physical security to do that. So Face ID, Touch ID, or you can use a PIN, but it does require physical interaction, and it's really, really slow. And I'm a child of the 80s. I grew up with Back to the Future, and there's two things I remember from this scene in Back to the Future. Number one is that's Elijah Wood, but number two is if you've got to use your hands, then it's like a baby's toy. Nobody wants to use their hands. We're in 2020, not 2015. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool if instead of getting my phone out and unlocking my phone and doing all that stuff, if I could control it using my voice? So ordinarily, if I do this in person, I would say out the commands you're going to see now. If I say it now, because I'm on my AirPods, my phone's going to start listening and cut off the audio. So I'm not going to do that. You'll have to pretend that I'm saying what it's saying. But if I were to say this, turn on the car preconditioning, then done, really quick. Loads quick in the app. So what if I were to check the charge level of the car? There we go. And so that's it. That'd be really cool if I could do that, I thought. If I could do that, then I could be able to control my car with my phone, my iPad, my MacBook. my watch, my HomePod, and even my Apple TV. And who doesn't want to control their car with our Apple TV? And as we were pointing out in the last demo, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should, but you're probably going to, right, if it's there. So what would I need to achieve this? Well, first of all, I'm going to need an Apple device. And in that video there, I hadn't programmed voice recognition or anything like that. I was leveraging HomeKit. So I've got an Apple device. It's going to go ahead and connect to HomeKit and issue commands there. So then HomeKit needs to be able to talk to my car. I've no intention of sitting and learning how to write HomeKit. I've no intention of, a lot of this is a system on chips that are on the actual device. I have no intention of doing that. And so I had a look online and I found a technology called Homebridge. So Homebridge is a platform that sits between HomeKit and your non-HomeKit devices. So in short, it's HomeKit support for the impatient. So me, I've got a car, Jaguar car. Jaguar are never, I don't know what their roadmap looks like, but they're never going to write an integration to work with HomeKit. So this works really well for me. But I guess it's not really meant for people to hack their cars. I think it's meant for things like if you go out and buy a new smart plug and the smart plug works with Alexa and Google Home, but it doesn't support HomeKit because HomeKit has a certification program that's quite involved, quite expensive, then you can go ahead and you can add the support here. It's essentially a lightweight Node.js server that emulates the Apple HomeKit API. And they claim on the website you can run it on any computer, even a $5 Raspberry Pi Zero. There's a really vibrant community of plugin developers. So although I've written my own plugin for this for my car, there's essentially like a marketplace that you can go into for plugins for like the Tesla car, for Dyson fans, for Nest cameras, for Nest doorbells, for thermostats, for Hive, for all the various different devices that out of the box don't work with Apple. You can go and install this on your network, and it will just go ahead and sit between your Apple devices and your non-Apple devices. So I've just put a link down there at the bottom for the actual project if you're interested in going and looking. I've also collated all the links that you'll see throughout this presentation on the last slide in case if you just want to go ahead and research this. So we know Apple to HomeKit to Homebridge. We know that Homebridge is going to run on a Raspberry Pi. So previously I'd gone away and set this up manually, but then when I came to do my car, I saw that somebody had gone to the trouble of creating a Docker image. So you can just, on a blank new Raspberry Pi install, on this URL here, you can just, there's some commands, there's a single command you can go ahead and type. You type that command and it will create you a Docker container running Homebridge. You can access it and control it via a web portal. And so that's what I've gone ahead and have used here. So from Homebridge then, I need to write a plugin that will go ahead and talk to my car. So all I need to know is, what's the car doing? So I should just probably clarify, in doing this, in hacking my car, I didn't put greasy overalls on, I didn't lift up the bonnet and get in the engine and, you know, attach things under there. I'm a software engineer, that's not what I do. I thought, I know, I'll reverse engineer the Android APK, that's far easier. So I looked at that, I looked at doing it, managed to get the code, started to dive into it, and I thought, do you know what? This is crazy, why would I do this? Somebody else on the internet must have had far more free time than I've got available. Somebody else must have done it. So I had a look and somebody had. So this guy, linked to the Postman collection that he's created here, this guy ordered a Jaguar I-Pace. There was a waiting list. I think he was waiting for about 5 months. He was so eager, he wanted to absorb everything I-Pace, that he went away, downloaded the app, and he reverse engineered it. And so I'm just, I downloaded this Postman collection, put in my credentials, hit a few endpoints, and saw that it worked. It would tell me the status of the vehicle. It would let me lock and unlock the car. It would let me turn on and off the air conditioning. So I've got the API now. I know what I need to write against. So before we go any further, we start looking at some code. I need to tell you about some Homebridge terminology. I say Homebridge, it's actually HomeKit terminology. So in HomeKit, we've got a couple of terms that I'm going to use in the code that we should probably understand here. The first one is a plugin. So the plugin is just your code, essentially, running on Homebridge. An accessory represents a HomeKit device that you're going to install on the Homebridge. So in our case, the accessory is going to be the car. We're going to create an accessory to represent the car. A service represents a group set of values that are necessary to provide a logical function. So most of the time when you're thinking about a supported HomeKit device like a thermostat or a door lock, you're actually thinking of a service. And accessories can expose one or more services. So we're thinking that in the car world, there's the car as the accessory, and you might have a service there for the thermostat, you might have for the air conditioning, you might have a service there for the door lock, you might have a service there for the battery, for example. And then lastly, we've got characteristic. So characteristic represents a particular type of variable assigned to a service. For instance, the lock mechanism service contains a current door state characteristic that describes whether or not the door is locked. So here we've got some example services. Battery service I mentioned, that's a service, and thermostat, these are services that an accessory could have. And then we've got some example characteristics. So the battery service has a battery level, tells you how much charge the battery's got. A thermostat has a current heating cooling state characteristic. That tells you whether it's heating or cooling or not doing anything. And the thermostat also has a current temperature characteristic. Put a link at the bottom here. This is to the TypeScript definition for all the various different accessories, services, and characteristics. Oh, the only thing I didn't mention there in the terminology, I'm not actually using this demo, but it's a platform. So what a platform is a collection of accessories that share the same common config. So if you think about a Nest doorbell, a Nest thermostat, and a Nest security camera, they're all accessories that sit on the Nest platform because you would use the same credentials to go ahead and log in and control that. A little bit of additional background that you'll need to understand this is, and I'll show you this in place in a second. It requires some config, Homebridge requires some config where you describe the accessories that you want Homebridge to run for you. The key piece of information here in the config is the accessory array, and the key value there is the actual accessory value. So that string there, hacking my Jaguar, is used to bootstrap the accessory. So if you look in the code on the right, we can see that to bootstrap an accessory, we just export a default function. And in here, we'll pass an instance of the Homebridge API. We just make a call out to register accessory. We give it a unique identifier. So in this case, I'm using the name of my NuGet package. And then the string there, hacking my Jaguar, needs to match the string of the accessory. And that's how it knows which accessory to bootstrap. And then you need to give it the name of the class or the constructor for the class that will go ahead and construct your accessory instance at runtime. Okay, it's time to look at some code. So if I just start presenting that. Just before we jump into some code, I thought I'd show you what Homebridge actually looks like. So for those of you that have got Apple devices, if you were to go out and buy a plug that supported HomeKit, on the back of the plug, it has a little QR code. And then from the Home app, you get your phone out and you scan the QR code and that adds it into your home. And so if this was the first time I was deploying a Homebridge instance, I'd get my phone out, I'd bring up the Home app and I would scan that QR code and it would add the bridge to my home network. On the right-hand side here, I've got, if I was in person, I would have my phone and I'd have the phone up on the screen, but it's a little difficult doing it over Zoom. So I'm just showing you the Home app as it appears in macOS. And so this default room here is essentially the room that Homebridge here is creating for me. If I go into plugins, we can see it's got some plugins installed. It's got a shell for a plugin that I'm about to show you now. I've had to install it ahead of time because ordinarily you'd go over to NPM and download a plugin. But I'm not going to round trip it onto NPM and then download it again. I'm just going to push it straight to my Homebridge. There's a plugin here for the config UI, so that's actually the UI that we're seeing here. And then there's a dummy switch here. So this plugin here is what's powering this switch, this dummy switch here. I mentioned some config. So we've got here, I mentioned accessories. So this one accessory here that I've highlighted represents this switch here. And so there'll be an accessory called dummy switch, which we can see in plugins, and it just tells it to start an instance of this. So if I just go back to the home page, and we can see some logs going off here. Ignore all the failed messages. This is just because my plugin isn't in NPM. If I show the controls for my home, I can see the switch here, and I'm just going to toggle it on. And as I toggle it on, we should see messages appear, and then I'll toggle it off, and then I'll toggle it on, and I'll toggle it off. And we can see that it's just logging information out there. Okay, so it's time to write some code. So what I want to do is I want to create an accessory that exposes how much charge my car has got, because that's something that's important when I'm out and about, and I want to know if I've enough charge to get somewhere. I need to know how much charge I've got, and I want to know if it's currently charging in case I've forgotten to plug it in, for example. So I'm going to create a new accessory that's going to go ahead and do that for me. So as I mentioned previously, you need to bootstrap your function, your accessory. So let's go ahead and do that. The first thing I'm going to do is, I know later on I'm going to need access to the HomeKit accessory protocol, HAP, so I can create some services. So I'm just going to store this, and I get this from the Homebridge API that I've been passed in. And one of the advantages of this being TypeScript is when I first wrote this, there was no TypeScript support. So I had to refer to lots of documentation on the available types. Since they introduced TypeScript support, this has just become an exercise in exploring IntelliSense. So I need to bootstrap my accessory. So I'm going to go ahead and register it. There's 2 overloads here. I'm going to use the second overload. And so it wants a unique identifier for my plugin. So my NuGet package was called JLR demo. I need to give it a name, so I'm going to call this hacking my Jaguar, and I'll come back and refer to this string when I configure the instance of this code running on my Homebridge shortly. And then it needs an instance of a class that will represent my accessory. I've got one here boilerplated, so let's just put that in. And so what that will do is, when this code's first loaded, it will let Homebridge know that if it encounters the string hacking my Jaguar in an accessory declaration in the config, we can go ahead and just create an instance of this class. So my class that away. And we'll look at the code here. So this is a basic accessory that I've written. The only thing contractually you need to do is provide a get services method, and it needs to return an array of services, and these are HomeKit services. So what I've done is I've declared my method. I'm just going to return out a field that I've got here. I've gone ahead and I've declared that. And then I've also got a reference to an object called the Jaguar Land Rover Remote API. So that's just a class that I wrote to encapsulate away all the complexities of the Jaguar API. It is just a RESTful API. It isn't doing anything special. I'm sure we've all written code to interact with a RESTful API. So for the purpose of this demo, I've just wrapped it up and just declared it there as a line. We won't really go into too much detail about what that's doing. So when an instance of the accessory is constructed, Homebridge will give you something to chuck out logs. So we saw that on the Homebridge portal. It was displaying out logs. That's how we get access to that. And it gives you a config object here. So if I just slide back to my Homebridge config editor, we can see that it's going to give me this thing. So if I add my accessory here, anything I put in here will come through as config. And so there's one here called name, for example. That would come through into the config here. So all I'm doing is creating an instance of my remote API. So this is the API that's actually going to go ahead and control the car. And so I only have to concern myself now with connecting my accessory and bridging the gap between HomeKit and the Jaguar Land Rover API. So what I want to do is I want some kind of service that's going to interact with the API that will tell me the status of the battery, because that's my goal for this. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to create a little method that's going to help me do that. So create me a battery service. And I think my battery service is probably, I want it to display the name from my config just to prove that comes through. So I'll pass that through as a parameter. So let's go ahead and define that battery service then. So let's create my battery service. And I said it had a name, which is a string. And I want it to return me a battery service. That. So let's create an instance and return the battery service. So I'm going to use the HAP that I grabbed up here from Homebridge. So Homebridge, if you remember, gave me access to the Homebridge accessory protocol, so I can go ahead and create accessories and services. And I want it to create me a service, and the one I want is a battery service. And I'll give it the name, and then one of the parameters it wants is a, oh, I missed a new there, wait a second. One of the parameters it wants is a subtype, and I'll say this is a type of vehicle. And then ultimately, I want to return this service out so that HomeKit can get it when get service is called. So I mentioned that every service has characteristics. I mentioned for my services, there's two pieces of information that I'm interested in. I'm interested in how much charge does the battery have, and did I remember to plug it in? So let's go ahead and do that. So we can say, let's access the characteristic. The characteristic I'm interested in is the battery level. And so this characteristic here is defined in HomeKit. So let's go ahead and get the battery level. And then I'm going to tell HomeKit that when you want to get it, it uses a listener mechanism. When you want to get the battery level, come talk to me and I'll give you it. So I want to say get battery level, and I'll create a function that goes ahead and does that. The only thing is, the HomeKit API doesn't work with SEncode. It uses a callback mechanism. I want to write my code using async, so I've just got a little helper that will convert an async method into a callback. Okay, and then the other thing I said I wanted to do was I wanted to know whether or not the car's plugged in, whether the battery's charging essentially. So let's go to Homebridge and say that when we're going to provide a characteristic called charging state. When HomeKit wants to get the charging state, come to me, and again I'm going to wrap it in callbackify, and I'll create a method called get charging state. Okay, so I've created my battery service. I've defined a characteristic called battery level, and I've said when HomeKit wants to get that, when it calls the get listener on there, I need to provide a method that's going to return that. And then same for charging state, I need to provide a method that's going to return that. So let's define those methods then. So the first one I had there was, it was get battery level. Get battery level. It's going to be asynchronous, so it's going to return me a promise. The reason it's going to be asynchronous is it's going to make an API call out to the internet. I don't want to be waiting around for that. I think it's a good idea that we should probably log something out to that display. So let me get access to the logger and just say something like getting battery level, so we know what's going on, and then if anything, you know, if anything goes wrong, we can output that. So the battery level is available on the remote service. There's a method on there I can call vehicles. Let's do a vehicle status, and let's go ahead and get the from the remote API. Let me get the vehicle status from the API. So that's just one of the methods defined in the Postman API that I found that will go away to the car, authenticate itself, and pull back a long list of attributes. And then what I want from the vehicle status is I want the charge level. That's what I'm interested in. So if I look at vehicle status, and I look again, one of the beauties of TypeScript is I can see all the different properties that method's returning. So I can get like battery status, battery voltage. They're the actual engine battery. They're not the EV system batteries. So I'm not interested in those. Brazil event mode, whatever that one is. There's some around climate status and various other properties. So I know the property that I'm after is to do with EV, and I want to know what is the state of charge. There we go. And then once I've got that, I can just return that out, right? I can just return the charge level. So that's the first one done. And then the next thing I want to do is I want to provide a method that can be called whenever HomeKit wants to get the charging state. So let me write a method called get charging state. And this time, it's not a number. HomeKit has a special enumeration for this called charging state that I need to map to. So once I've got the value from the API, I need to interpret that and map it to one of the defined allowed charging states. So again, let's log it out. Let's let Homebridge know what we're doing while we're getting the charging state. Okay. Let's get the vehicle status again. So we'll go ahead and get the vehicle status. And no, we don't want that, want the vehicle status. And then we want the charging status. That's the one we're actually interested in. So that will be vehicle status. And I think it's another EV property. There it is, it's charging status. And I know that can have a value, it can have a couple of values, but there's one key value that means it's charging. So if it has a value of charging, or not charging, charging, then go ahead and return one of these predefined charging states, which is charging. Otherwise, it is not charging. I believe it is. Yep, not charging. There we go. So let's have a quick recap, because I think we've done everything we need to do to get the car to talk to HomeKit. So I'll just clap these down a second. So at the top we had some code that went away and it bootstrapped our accessory. It gave it a unique identifier, which would probably be the name of the NPM package. I gave it a unique name, which Homebridge can associate with an accessory within my config. And I've given it the class that will represent my actual accessory. So in my class, when we're constructed, I create an instance of an API that can talk to the car for me. And then I go ahead and I create a battery service. When I create the battery service, I said to HomeKit, create me a battery service with a name that's pulled from my config, and it's of type vehicle. This is free, just free text. You can put anything you want there, by the way. I'd say my battery service has got two characteristics. It's got one for battery level, and when HomeKit wants to get the battery level, go to my battery level method, and that will get it for you. And then I've got another one for charging state, and when HomeKit wants to get the charging state, you can go off to my method there. And then there's two methods down here. All they're doing is interacting with the Jaguar Land Rover remote API to get the vehicle status. I interrogate the EV state of charge property and then return that out. That's basically a number between 0 and 100. And then for the charging state, I pull out the status, vehicle status again, and get the charging state. If the charging status is charging, then we tell HomeKit it's this known value, that means it's charging, and if it's not, it's this known value, that means it's not charging. And I think that's it. So let's have a go at building that, make sure it builds. So if I do a yarn build, make sure I've not made any mistakes. I may have just typed in my other window. That worked. And then if I deploy this, okay, so that's now been deployed to my Raspberry Pi. That is running my Homebridge. So if I flick back in here, what I need to do in here now is I need to tell Homebridge that it's got an accessory, a new accessory. So let's do that. Let's create the accessory. Now I can't remember what I called it, so I'll come back to that in a second. But the name, I'm going to call it Will's iPace. And I said when we were bootstrapping, there was some important information there. It was this string here, hacking my Jaguar. Let's just grab that. So that's my accessory. So I'm going to save this, and I'm actually going to restart it because it tends to be a little bit finicky. And let's see what happens. Hopefully we should see an accessory appearing here that represents a battery. That's the charging status and a charge level. I could do with the Jeopardy theme tune playing now. Here we go. Lovely. So let me just click out of that. So here we go. I can see iPace here. We can see it's complained about not supported. There is a reason for that. I won't go into that. But I can show the controls there. And when I bring those controls up, it's got the name that I gave it. and you saw it pulled in there, the battery level at 92%, and the car is currently plugged in and it is charging. So job done. I've written an accessory and it's pulling those details out. So just to prove that it's not just a one-trick pony, some of the capabilities that we can introduce here, you could introduce a service for the locking mechanism, so you can lock and unlock the car. You can introduce a service for the charger, so you can detect whether or not the cable's plugged in and turn the charger on and off, and one for the air conditioning. So in true Blue Peter fashion, I've actually done those already. Ordinarily, I don't think you would write the services inside your accessory. I've just kept it here for the purposes of the demo, but I've got a charger service, a lock service, and a preconditioner service. So let's have a look at the charger one, because this, I think, is nice and easy to understand. So when we construct an instance of the charger service, it looks very similar. I create a service outlet. It's called outlet because I guess it's American, and Americans call plugs outlets. I define a characteristic for an outlet. For on is the outlet on, and this has got two methods. It's got one for getting whether or not the outlet is on, and it's got a method for setting whether or not the outlet is on. So this is HomeKit saying, is the outlet turned on? And this is HomeKit saying, turn the outlet on. So this is query, and this one's commanding. And then I've got another one to say, is the outlet in use? So you can have the outlet turned on, but if the cable's not plugged in, then it's not in use. And so that's just a differentiation that I put in there. And again, I put some methods in that will actually go away and talk to the car. So looks very similar. So to get the charger outlet on and off, I go off and I get the status, and I pull out the charging status that we saw already. I know I did this in the battery service. I put it in there for an example, but you can pull it out here as well. I've got one for whether or not the outlet is in use. So the outlet is in use if the car charging method is wired. Not sure why that's wired. I don't know if they have plans in the future to introduce wireless charging, but that's the value it returns out. And then there's just a method here for actually turning the charger on and off. And so what I do for that is, first of all, I find out if the charger is in use, and then based on the state value that I've been provided, I go ahead and just set a characteristic, and if it's currently off, I turn it on, and if it's on, I turn it off. And so these are just methods on the remote API that were in that Postman collection. So there's some additional services that you can see an example. I've also got here the types that are exposed by HomeKit. So there's all sorts in here. If I just have a scroll down to battery service, we can see the type definition for a battery service. All kinds of service in here. We've got contact sensors, carbon monoxide sensors, door. So I could, for example, program a service that knows whether all the doors are open, because the API does have a data point that tells you which of the doors are open. I'm not going to do that here. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and introduce these services here. So in true Blue Peter fashion, I'm going to cheat and copy and paste some code that I wrote earlier just to go ahead and instantiate those. So I've added in a charger service, a lock service, and a preconditioning service. This is essentially air conditioning. They call it preconditioning at Jaguar, but it's essentially turning the air conditioning on and off. So if I build again, and I deploy again, now that I've added those new services to my accessory, and I go into the car, I'm going to restart it so it reloads the code. Ordinarily, what you do is whenever you do an upgrade, it would appear in plugins that you published a new version to NPM. It would download it and restart itself. Because I'm kind of circumventing NPM and I'm pushing the code directly, I'm just restarting Homebridge so it doesn't have to realize there's been an update there. So hopefully, when I did this yesterday, this broke. So hopefully this has worked. Let me just make sure I deployed it. That's what I failed on yesterday. I did. Again, we could probably do with a countdown music here while we wait for it to restart the Homebridge. Ooh, taking a long time. Okay, I think it's back up and running again. Maybe it's just playing up. So this now I would have expected to change to recognize the fact that, let me see if there's any error, shall we? This is the cursor of the demo type. Oh, I know what I've done. Yep. Error between chair and keyboard. I just need to do this. So let's do that again. Let's do a build. Let's do a deploy. Lovely. So we can see that it was chucking out some error information. I know what that error means. So this will probably now reload the accessory. We might be restarting. There we go. It's reloaded. So hopefully it will pick up the new accessory capabilities in here. There we go. Starting up. Lovely. So I can see now I've got a new representation for this. I can show controls. So Will's eyepiece. This is the icon. If you're familiar with HomeKit, this is the icon for the lock. We've got one here for this is the icon for an outlet. We can see the outlet's turned on. We can see a preconditioning. We can see the air conditioning, essentially it's turned off, but if I turn it on, it'll come on at 21 degrees. I can control that. And just to, if I show separate tiles. So we can see here all the different components in here. And I can, for example, hopefully click on that and it's unlocking, and now the car's unlocked. You'll have to take my word for it because I've got a camera on the car, and then I click it now, I'm unlocked again. And that, in a nutshell, is how you write accessories for HomeKit and how you go about hacking your car so you can control it with your voice. I know I've not showed it with my voice, but as I mentioned, because I've got my headphones in, if I say the hey and then the name of the Apple assistant, Siri, then it'll cut my audio. So that is it. It's as easy as that. Any questions?
That was an awesome talk, Will. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat. I'll give you a minute or so, and then, yeah, we can go through them.
Lovely. Whilst we're waiting for that, I'm just going to do a really shameless plug. As I mentioned, I'm head of engineering at Muscle Food. It's a brand new team. We're 9 months old, and we are hiring. We've started from scratch. We've got 2 teams in place at the moment. I've got another 2 full teams in place. So if you are interested in speaking to me and finding out what it is that we're doing, I should probably prefix that we're not hacking cars. It's not that exciting, but if you are interested, then please reach out. I've got another slide here with all the links on, and it's got my contact details at the bottom, just on LinkedIn. Reach out and have a conversation.